Well, good morning all. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate you all taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this session today. Just as a quick overview to today's agenda, we're going to quickly kick things off with an introduction to myself and ANSecurity. We'll then look at some of the things we should be concerned about and why. We'll then briefly touch upon what attracted ANSecurity to partner with Cynet. And then we'll take a look at how we can consolidate endpoint with XDR solutions and how you can get peace of mind around your security posture and approach to breach protection. And we'll finalize things by wrapping things up with a Q&A session at the end. As a quick introduction, I am James Houghton, and I am the UK account manager for ANSecurity. I have many years' experience working within a multitude of technology companies and solutions providers, advising organizations on how to make the best investment to improve their overall security posture whilst reducing their total costs. I'm joined today by my colleague Anthony Roberts, and he is a systems engineer at Cynet, and he holds a wealth of experience in the security sector. Did you want to say hi to the group, Anthony?
Yeah, thanks, James. And yeah, good morning, everyone. And really excited about running this session and this webinar today with ANSecurity, and I really hope you all enjoy it.
Thanks, Anthony. We look forward to hearing a bit more from yourself later. So I don't want to bore anyone with a blatant sales pitch, but for those of you who haven't heard of or attended an ANSecurity event before, I wanted to take a minute to quickly highlight what we do as a business. As the name suggests, we are a security consultancy who offer a range of services and solutions across the entire end-to-end security spectrum, from the core infrastructure all the way through to the perimeter. And today we are focused on this last piece in the top right-hand corner of monitoring and response. So we provide advice and guidance whether you're looking to obtain your required certifications for things like Cyber Essentials, or if you're embarking on a new project or evaluation, we can help in all aspects of the security. We have a very simple approach to helping our customers, which is to discover your needs, design the solution to meet them, and then prove that it works before deploying it. Now, for each of the solutions that you can see across the entire end-to-end security spectrum, we provide a range of options to help you to get to where you need to be. All of these services and solutions are designed around one core objective, which is helping our customers to continually improve their security posture to meet the external threats that we're all facing in our world, which are always increasing. So why are we here today, and what should we all be concerned about? So firms are having to deal with a landscape where cybersecurity is an increasingly important issue. No business of any size can ignore the heavy media coverage or cybersecurity and the threats that are presented with it. The latest cyber attacks making the headlines have typically been large companies, and with the accelerated evolution of the workplace since March this year, additional new challenges have arisen. One thing that has stayed the same is that cyber attacks against firms are increasing, and they are and will continue to be prime targets due to the vast amounts of money, information, and client data that they retain. So this is clearly a troubling realization, considering they are inherently built upon strict confidence and trust from clients. Many firms do not even know they have been compromised when a cyber attack takes place, and often by the time they realize a breach has taken place, significant damage may already have been done, with most then not knowing how to act next. A PwC report released this year in 2020 showed that over 150 companies had their data published on leak sites in just the first week of lockdown. It also highlighted that, disturbingly, cybersecurity had taken a backseat due to other concerns that came about due to COVID. According to a report from IBM in 2019, the average time to identify a breach was 206 days, and the average lifecycle of a breach was 314 days from the breach to the containment period. And according to the University of Maryland, hackers attack every 39 seconds. That's on average 2,244 times a day. Ensuring all data is protected is another key task for any firm. And with the number of threats and the sophistication of attacks increasing, that represents a formidable challenge. According to PwC's annual survey of firms in 2019, they all stated that cyber attacks were more of a threat than they was the year before. Every one of the firms surveyed had suffered a security incident in the last year, and the most common of these was phishing attempts, which some firms reported were daily events. Firms also reported malware attacks, network intrusions, and the loss of information through leakage and staff incidents. 75% of the top 10 firms and 90% of the top 11 to 100 firms had experienced incidents due to the insider threat, which is the threat from the firm's own employees and contractors, either through negligence or actual malice. So when a cybersecurity breach takes place, one of the immediate questions asked is the cost implications to the business. This is, of course, not to be taken lightly, but due to the nature of the work undertaken by firms, reputational damage needs to be taken just as seriously. Major firms deal with vast amounts of sensitive data and are entrusted by their clients to keep this confidential and secure. This relationship is the foundation on which this profession is built upon. And this is why the board should be concerned. Fundamentally, cyber threats impact the bottom line. Now, we have worked with a number of customers during lockdown to help build business cases for a range of security projects. And I think that one of the most useful recent in-depth research of a breach comes from a 2019 report from the Phenomenon Institute entitled Cost of a Data Breach. Just to be clear, this only covers the specifics around the cost of data breaches, and there are, of course, many other kinds of breach that take place. But to us, this is the best factual information to help support your internal investment discussions. So as you can see, shockingly, the average cost of a data breach, based upon this research over a 12-month period taken from 500 companies, was $3.92 million. That figure was made up of 4 key factors. The first relates to the detection and escalation costs, and this is a significant component at just over 1.2 million. But for us, one of the more worrying parts was not just the cost, but as we mentioned in the last slide, the amount of time taken to discover and remediate against these threats. The second element is concerned with the notification cost, which is basically the cost of letting people know their data has been compromised. The third element is post-breach response costs, or in other words, the activities needed to redress and repair the situation. And finally, the one which really makes people sit up and understand is the lost business costs. This is fairly self-explanatory, but basically the activities associated with the cost of lost business, such as business disruption, system downtime, and reduced revenue as a result of reputational damage. So 3.92 million, that's a heck of an impact on the overall bottom line of the performance of a business. And this is precisely why cybersecurity should not just be considered an IT thing, as it impacts an organization's bottom line financial performance. And when it comes to security, it's absolutely true, size doesn't matter. Although the total cost of a breach is less the smaller the organization size, the actual cost per employee is significant. So if you have 25,000 employees, the cost is around 204 per employee. However, if you are a business of between 500 to 1,000 employees, that increases significantly to more than $3,500 per head, which unfortunately and frequently is enough to bring a business to its knees, or in the worst case scenario, wipe it out altogether. And PwC's annual law firm survey contains a telling statistic that 100% of the top 100 firms suffered a cybersecurity event in the last year, 100%. And these are large organizations who have the capabilities to invest in their security and who have a large-scale security deployment and team to help manage them. So ANSecurity is a technology-agnostic security consultancy. What is the appeal for us to partner with an organization like Cynet? Well, the first thing we both agree is that there is nothing more frustrating to us and our end users than overinvestment or unnecessary investments. Security teams often have a vast array of different products and services they are managing, and these end up creating security product silos and a challenge in itself for security professionals to manage. What we now require is something that pulls together all the different security assets into one singular view so we can gain full visibility and control of our security makeup in a single pane of glass and have insight and even foresight into the threat landscape. And this is exactly what Cynet offers. And Cynet actually released the results of a survey earlier this year, and of the 1,500 cybersecurity professionals they surveyed, 72% stated that difficulties in managing the security products in place is the main reason for stopping new projects this year. And 78% stated that the main obstacle is the management, maintenance, and operational overhead of the security products already deployed. So as we said, security teams have too many products, which are cumbersome and difficult to manage. The existing products they have are stopping them from being able to invest in the things they need, and it's taken the focus and resource away from what is most important to security. Companies need to take a newly evolved approach to security breaches, which is autonomous breach protection. This is basically a method that integrates the endpoint, network, and user prevention, as well as detection and response techniques, coupled with automated investigation and remediation. The first pillar is prevention and detection, where we require complete coverage of all the attack vectors that involve the user, network files, and hosts. We then need to leverage this visibility into all endpoint, network, and user activities in the environment to prevent and detect the widest range of attack vectors to deliver unparalleled threat coverage and accuracy. The second pillar is monitoring and control. This is where we need to have the automated collection and correlation of all the activities across the environment, which ultimately results in deeper visibility that introduces really sort of unmatched ease and agility into operations such as vulnerability management, file integrity monitoring, and inventory management. And the third and final pillar is the whole response orchestration piece. And this is where we require full automation of response workflows across the entire environment. We need an approach that provides the widest set of remediation actions for infected endpoints, network-controlled traffic, malicious files, and compromised user accounts, as well as cross-environment operations that involve core components such as our firewalls and Active Directories. Simply put, we require simplified breach protection workflows that enable security teams to prepare, confront, and respond to cyber attacks via a single, powerful interface with a consolidated approach, which enhances our visibility of vulnerabilities. And now I'll pass you over to Anthony to talk us through how we can adopt the Cynet autonomous breach protection and response methodology, and to explain why the old way of doing things is no longer sufficient. Over to you, Anthony.
Excellent. Thanks, James. I will just share my screen. Just want to confirm, can you see my screen okay, James?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so thank you for that, James, and really interesting to see some of them statistics there, especially around the average dwell time of a breach in an environment, and that figure just seems to keep going up. I think the last time I saw some statistics around that, it was around 180, 190 days. So what I wanted to do, first of all, before I go into the Cynet solution and what we're doing and why we've developed the solution and what actually XDR is, I'm conscious that there is a lot of buzzwords in security, and XDR is a new buzzword that's just come out, and I'm sure you'll all see Gartner soon will have a new quadrant around XDR technology. But I want to talk about the evolution of endpoint security, because I think endpoint security today is becoming more and more important. While back, if you look, 10 years ago, for example, it wasn't as important. We had antivirus on the endpoint, and we felt that the endpoint was secure enough with an antivirus solution doing signature-based detection. But if we fast forward a little bit, obviously, we're seeing now, obviously, the endpoint's becoming more dynamic. The internet's becoming more dynamic. We've got hybrid infrastructures whereby we've got, customers using physical infrastructure, virtual infrastructure, and public cloud infrastructure. It's very, very difficult to secure your endpoints because they can be connected to different infrastructures, and it's difficult to gain all of that visibility. So to tackle this, obviously, across the endpoint, what we saw was the evolution of different technologies. So we saw next-gen antivirus. Then we saw endpoint protection, and then next-gen endpoint protection. So next-gen endpoint protection introduced behavioral analytics, AI, machine learning. It introduced, more sophisticated detection mechanisms to be able to detect advanced threats across the endpoint. And then more recently, we've seen endpoint detection and response. So the ability to detect something bad, detect a compromise at the endpoint, but also automatically remediate to its pre-infection state. So we've seen this progression in endpoint security because of the way, obviously, businesses are adapting and working across the various different environments. As I mentioned before, no longer can we put a nice security boundary around our gateways and have our endpoints secured. The problem is EDR technology is now a 5-year-old technology, and obviously, as we know, threat actors are evolving constantly, and we need to evolve as well from a defense side of security. And if we're just focusing on the endpoint, we're still lacking visibility. For example, what's happening across the network, what's happening with your users, for example. So we've seen new solutions evolve from EDR and from, right the way from the beginning, from antivirus, to address some of these challenges. More recently, we've seen NTA, which stands for Network Threat Analytical Solution. There's lots of technology out there that can monitor the network, connect to a network switch, or connect to a physical tap, and monitor network traffic to look for lateral movement activity. How that usually works with most of the vendors I've worked with or I've looked at is they're looking at all of the internal communication, external communication, traffic patterns using network signatures. And all of this goes into a sensor on the network. So whether it's an appliance or it could be a virtual appliance. And using artificial intelligence, they're baselining the network traffic to then trying to identify anomalies of what good and bad should look like. So this can be a great solution for giving you visibility of network traffic and what's happening laterally across your network. However, there is strengths and weaknesses to it. So if we look at the weaknesses of an NTA solution, a lack of remediation. So it's going to tell you that we've seen something move laterally across the network. There's an endpoint infected. It's trying to call out to various servers across the network. But then you still have to investigate and you still have to then try and remediate against that. And the question is, do you have the skill sets and the teams and the knowledge to be able to do that in the right way? As James mentioned before, you know, the average breach before breach and containment is 314 days. So it's, you know, this can help obviously narrow those days down, but it's very, very difficult if you don't have the people and the processes. And deployment is also an issue with network threat analytical solutions. As I mentioned before, our environment's becoming more dynamic. We've got physical infrastructures, virtual, and now public cloud as well. You know, are you going to be able to deploy an NTA solution across all of those environments to give you full visibility? And if you're a larger organization, what about multiple thousands and thousands of VLANs and networks? It can become very expensive. So usually we see customers only get partial visibility, but obviously there's still those blind spots. But there's also the issue of encrypted traffic with an NTA solution. So we have to think about how we see encrypted traffic. And most of the time you have to buy another solution to do the decryption to then pass it to the network threat analytical sensor. There's obviously strengths to an NTA. No agent, you've got that network visibility of network-based attacks, that constant monitoring of activity across the network. And then obviously other solutions we hear a lot, you may be running them SIM platforms, you know, very, very useful for providing complete visibility across all of your different sources, from your proxies to your firewalls to your antivirus solutions. But often the challenge I see is deployment can be very difficult. Also you need, again, it's about that process and those people. You need to have the right people and the right processes to be able to manage the SIM. But then obviously you can have a managed SIM, somebody manages it for you, but they're telling you when you've got a problem and when there has been a breach, you still have to go and mitigate against that. And then we've seen more recently SOAR platforms, which are an extension to a SIM platform. If you haven't heard of them or if you haven't looked at SOAR before, I'm sure most of you have, giving you the ability to have some response orchestration. So the ability to automatically respond to a breach from what you may have detected through your SIM or maybe your other third-party security devices like your antivirus or your IPSs, for example. But again, you know, there is the weaknesses and the strengths to a technology like this. The deployment timeframes can be very, very long. When you might need something rapidly to resolve a breach, for example, it can take time to get all of these platforms talking to each other through the REST APIs. And as I keep mentioning, you still need to have the right processes and people in place to manage a solution like this. So Cynet, what we did is we created an XDR solution. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we do all of this and how we address all of those weaknesses we discussed, and also how we've evolved from what I talked about in regards to the evolution of endpoint security. So yeah, XDR is the new term. Basically what it means is all of the previous stuff you see here and a lot more. So we're also doing network and user-based analytics with an XDR solution like Cynet. So we're not just looking at the endpoint, you know, what file activity and what host activity is going on. We're also going to focus on network analytics across the endpoints and also user analytics as well. So if you look at an EDR, what you should get with a good EDR solution is good forensics, good threat hunting, everything you see listed here, you would expect to get with a solid endpoint detection and response solution. With Cynet, you get all of the EDR capability. You get all of the previous products I mentioned when you looked at the evolution of endpoint security, from antivirus to next-gen antivirus with machine learning, behavioral analytics. But we've also built into the platform to address some of the challenges I talked about and some of the strengths and the weaknesses. We've added network analytics. We've added user endpoint behavioral analytics. We've also added deception as well. And I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail as we move on through the presentation. So here's we call it the Cynet 360 platform. And it's an autonomous breach protection platform. I'm going to talk a little bit more later on in the presentation how it actually works from an infrastructure perspective. But this is what it's offering, and we like to split it into 3 areas. First of all, if you look on the right, you've got the XDR capability. Just think of this as the evolution of endpoint security. This includes everything that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years and a little bit more. So we're using antivirus technology, including next-gen antivirus capability. We've got full endpoint detection and response capability. So all the stuff you would expect to see in a point product that you would be maybe using for EDR. But on top of that, we've introduced, and this is what makes Cynet an XDR solution, we've introduced user behavior analytics and network traffic analysis as well. So we're able to monitor user behavior and network behavior across the endpoints. And the last thing is deception. So I didn't mention it as a potential solution to address blind spots previously on my previous slides there, but there is lots of point products, and we're seeing lots of mainly larger customers buy deception technology because it really helps to add an additional layer of security into your infrastructure. So if you're already compromised, then let's set some traps for the threat actors. Let's add some fake users. Let's in the case that they may try and escalate privileges to that fake user. Let's plant some fake files across the endpoints. So if they're doing some reconnaissance locally on a server and they see some interesting files, they may grab some of the fake files that we planted. But we also are offering network deception as well. So the ability to we broadcast fake hosts on the network. So if if a threat actor is trying to move laterally, we can hopefully get them to move laterally to a fake host. Again, it's all about layers. Now, on top of our XDR platform, we're offering obviously 2 other benefits as well, as you see here. The first one being is we're also offering a 24/7 managed detection and response service. The benefit of this is Cynet, we actually came from an incident response background. This is where the platform spawned from. So we have a huge team of SOC analysts, all offensive security guys that have come from the offensive side of security that actually sit in our SOC and manage our SOC. Every single one of our customers, when they deploy Cynet, they automatically get our 24/7 managed detection and response service. And what this gives you is alert monitoring by our SOC, proactive threat hunting. So our offensive security personnel, they will, if we see threats across the globe through our other customers, they can use those indicators of compromise to proactively search your environment to see if we see the same threat happening there. They can help with remote incident response. So if you see something happen, or if you've seen Cynet flag up a user or some network behavior as a high risk, you can ask them to do some analysis for you and do some remote incident response. And we've also can generate attack reports for you as well. So when you see an attack, although we have reporting, we have the ability to pull all this data out of Cynet, you can ask our SOC, our team, to create detailed attack reports for you. And most importantly, and going back to what James mentioned before about the dwell time of an average breach, 314 days, what we're trying to do is automate the response time. So when we're finding something bad using our XDR technology, we want to be able to automatically remediate against the threat, depending on what type of threat it is. But we're also providing the ability to automatically investigate as well. So from the detection, we can use the IOCs and automatically investigate across your environment and then give you an incident report, which gives you the time it took us to, contain the actual breach, which will help reduce the average breach time. So let's look at that a little bit further on what our XDR platform is actually doing. So if we look at the endpoint itself, if we remember the evolution of endpoint security, antivirus was introduced to deal with malware and Trojans. And then next-gen AV and, EPP, EDR, when we started seeing some more advanced attacks, like exploits and fileless attacks are the most common type of attack I see at the moment across the a way of luring users to open a document, which then calls PowerShell, which then runs an obfuscated script, which may then create a reverse shell back to the attacker's command and control server, or it may escalate privileges on the endpoint so the attacker can do more. Fileless attacks are very, very common and very, very difficult to detect. Without a good XDR solution that's doing behavioral analytics, it's going to be difficult to see these malicious process commands that can be run in PowerShell. And obviously ransomware isn't going anywhere. It's been around now for a few years, and we've heard some big attacks due to ransomware taking organizations down. If you don't have a good plan in place, a good backup strategy in place, it can be very, very difficult to recover from ransomware. Most of the engagements, a lot of the engagements we do at Cynet is incident response engagements still, where organizations' data centers have been completely taken down. So they're using Cynet to install onto the endpoints as they bring the servers back up, but also help with the investigation as well to see whether the ransomware still exists. So with our XDR platform, you need good endpoint detection capability to detect the different types of attacks, but also the network type attacks. So we're monitoring network activity across the endpoint, spoofing type attacks, data exfiltration using DNS tunneling, lateral movement, responder type attacks. So because we're also monitoring network activity and applying network attack detection techniques to it, we can also prevent this and give you visibility of it. And the same goes for user activity as well. Rather than having a separate dedicated product that's learning user behavior, you can do it through a single solution like Cynet. So we can identify credential theft, malicious insiders. And obviously, as part of our XDR platform, we're offering deception as well. So we can plant decoy hosts on the network. We can put decoy files across your legitimate assets, and we can create decoy users. This is adding an additional layer of security, and it's very, very easy to implement without any additional cost and any additional equipment across your infrastructure. So moving on to the response automation, because I think this is key. I think the main challenge we see with customers is that response time, the ability to identify something, respond to it, mitigate and contain it. So you take the example of us identifying a malicious process command using our behavioral analytics. What we will do is we will automatically, so first of all, we will detect the malicious process command. But then taking it one step further, we will automatically investigate the root cause of the malicious process command. How did the malicious process command run? Was it a scheduled task? Was it executed remotely, for example? From that investigation, we will take the IOCs, we will then do a further investigation across the rest of the host that you deploy Cynet to. And if we find the same indicators, we will then mitigate automatically, which gives you automated investigation and automated remediation. Now, moving on to our 24/7 managed detection and response. I think it's really key to understand, and a lot of customers invest in Cynet because of this, because with limited people, with limited skill sets, it really does help to have that third set of eyes overlooking your security across your endpoints. So you can think of the Cynet SIOPS team as an extension to your security teams. By having this service, it's leveraging insight from hundreds and hundreds of our global clients. So everything feeds in to our SIOPS team. So you get, the added value is you're getting the third eye of, detection, continuous alert monitoring, investigation when needed, and response assistance as well. So let's look at an example of what a report would look like, how you can interact with our managed SIOPS team as well. So this is an example here of one of the Cynet dashboard. So you can see here we've got a file alert that hopefully you can see that it's quite small print. Now, if you see an alert appear in Cynet, obviously, as I've mentioned, we can auto remediate, we can auto investigate. But if you want to get some additional information, you can very quickly click the alert and you can do some additional analysis by then sending it to the SOC and letting them create a detailed threat analysis report for you with an exact summary, recommendations, so more detail around the forensics, all part of the actual threat itself. So it's also a nice service to help you create detailed reports when they happen, if you should have to present them back to anyone else within your teams. So how do we do it? So what we did at Cynet, when we looked at the issues and the challenges and the evolution of endpoint security, we're fully aware that there's a lot of endpoint technology out there, and I'm sure you're using you've got antivirus and potentially EDR or next-gen AV across your endpoints. So what Cynet did is we developed a smart agent, which means we don't install a physical kind of application on the endpoint whereby it uses lots of resources and memory and it downloads a big database. So we're trying to be as lightweight as possible, and we can run transparently alongside and seamlessly alongside other endpoint technologies that you're using. Because what we do, so we can deploy across Windows, across Mac, and across Linux. So for Windows, it's an MSI file that runs in a matter of seconds, and it loads the Cynet services into memory, which are anti-tamper proof. Those Cynet services are what offering all of our XDR response automation and managed detection and response service. They run very, very lightweight. And the key thing to a solution like Cynet, and if we look back at some of the challenges when we talked about the other solutions, is deployment. Because we are a very, very lightweight smart agent, we can deploy very, very quickly. So you can use your existing deployment tools, or you can use Cynet tools as well. So this is very appealing to a lot of our customers, is the ability to deploy across all of your endpoints, whether they're physical, virtual, or in public cloud. And also auto deployment, continuous monitoring of your subnets and your environments to auto deploy. Now, from an architecture perspective, again, we're very flexible. So the agent, you deploy the smart agent, and the smart agent then talks back to the Cynet central user interface. That can either be on-premise, and by on-premise, what I mean is it can be in a physical data center, it can be in your cloud data centers, which may be public cloud or private cloud, or it could be hybrid, a mixture of both, where you've got Cynet in one of your public data centers, or you've got Cynet, and then you've got sites where you want to deploy Cynet physical servers. Really depends on your infrastructure. I'll be completely honest with you, the majority of our customers, what I'm seeing at the moment, are going for our SaaS solution, because it makes sense from an operational perspective. We manage it, hot fixes, service packs. We manage the infrastructure, we update it, we maintain it. You gain access to a single Cynet tenant where you then control all of your endpoint environments and manage the solution from there. One single user interface. So we have this deployment timeline that we like to talk about at Cynet. We call it 2 clicks to value. It's really important to understand this, because again, when we look back at the challenges of some of the other solutions which we see customers invest in and struggle with from a deployment perspective, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to deploy. So the first thing, when you let's say you have a SaaS platform from Cynet. The first thing, as soon as you get the MSI file distributed out and installed, or the scripts for Linux and Mac, you gain immediate insight into your network and inventory across all of the assets you deploy Cynet to. The next step of a deployment is the XDR platform kicking in to, identify whether you've got any malicious indicators running across any of the endpoints that you've deployed Cynet to. So this is when we start to enable our behavioral analytics, our artificial intelligence, machine learning, heuristics, even the signature, antivirus signature, if you want to use our AV engine as well. So this then starts to offer complete coverage and protection across the whole of your environment, as long as you've deployed it to everything. And then obviously the key to the solution is the response automation, reducing that dwell time that James talked about before. And we, as I've mentioned already, we do automated investigation and complete remediation. We also offer the ability to create custom remediation into the solution. If you want it to integrate with your firewalls or your proxies, we can do that. But out of the box, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to deploy Cynet, have detection and good prevention in place, and automatically investigate and respond. If you can see here from the graphic, this is an example of an incident view report. So this gives you the full visibility of an attack from Cynet detecting it, from Cynet doing the investigation, giving you the findings, and then where we remediated. And most importantly, giving you this time to resolution here. You can see it took us 4 minutes here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it took us 4 minutes to find something malicious, investigate, and remediate, which, as you can see, reduces the dwell time rapidly from the average 314 days. So with that, I'm going to hand back over to James. I hope you found that useful. Back over to you, James.
Thanks, Anthony. Just to check, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. Very insightful. So just to very quickly recap some of the key points from that. With Cynet, we can obtain complete visibility of the entire threat landscape and gain immediate insight into every event that takes place in the environment through automated monitoring and correlation. We can also obtain enhancements in our monitoring and control capabilities. So we receive all the required abilities to effectively discover and reduce the exposed attack surfaces. The automated collection and correlation of all activities across the environment results in deeper visibility that introduces ease and agility into operations such as your vulnerability management, file integrity monitoring, and inventory management. We can also maximize our breach prevention and detection by leveraging Cynet's visibility into all the endpoint, network, and user activities in the environment to prevent and detect the widest range of attack vectors, which really delivers unparalleled threat coverage and accuracy. And we can also benefit from the response orchestration, which is giving us full automation of response workflows across the entire environment. Cynet provides the widest set of remediation actions for infected endpoints, network-controlled traffic, malicious files, and compromised user accounts, as well as cross-environment operations that involve core components such as firewalls, Active Directories, and other bits. And finally, you get top security and threat intelligence expertise from an elite team of threat analysts and security researchers that operate a 24/7 SOC service, providing your incident response, in-depth investigations, and proactive threat hunting. All of these core components of the Cynet solution provide consolidated defense and capabilities of your next-gen AVs, endpoint detection and response, user behavior analytics, network analytics, and deception, all through a single integrated platform. So you really do receive true visibility of the threat landscape, which is giving you and your business insight and peace of mind and complete control to enhance your security posture and to defend and remediate against any breach when it occurs. So just to recap again, the statistics clearly show that breaches are not a thing of the past and that we don't have adequate approaches and solutions in place that help us to mitigate against them. Breaches occur a lot more often than we believe and often go unnoticed for long periods of time. And if or when they are found, it's rarely a quick or cheap fix to remediate against them. And as we said before, 100% of the top 100 firms have been breached. It's an inevitability that it will happen to your business, and it's not a matter of if, but more the matter of when. That's if it hasn't happened already. Large-scale deployments of security products are creating cumbersome headaches and are diverting too much time, money, and energy spent in the wrong place, which is detracting us from where we should be investing. And as we said before, security is not just an IT thing. Breaches are costly and have a catastrophic effect on a business's bottom line in various ways, as well as its reputation. Breaches aren't something that we can ignore. They need to be addressed and prepared for. And this requires a newly evolved and enhanced approach to the old way of doing things. And with the autonomous breach protection from ANSecurity and Cynet, you can achieve this. So we said we'd give you peace of mind, and together with Cynet, we will. And in order to do so, we need to take a look at your environment to see what is there. You need visibility of all the threats, and you need to have the capability to take action to protect and remediate against them. Our free threat assessment will uncover any unknown threats in your existing environment and will empower you with complete visibility, monitoring and control, prevention and detection, and automated response workflows. So to conclude things, a couple of questions for you. Can you really afford not to act? And can you really afford not to have the free threat assessment? So with that, I'd just like to finish off with some Q&As. I think we've had a couple come through the chat. So the first one we have is, how does the Cynet platform differentiate to what was already out there and available to me? I think one for you, Anthony.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, when we looked at the evolution of endpoint security, we're trying to consolidate a lot of that into a single platform. So it differs in the fact that we've consolidated all of those different technologies I talked about, but we're also adding additional functionality to provide more layers to your security. And then on top of that, we're trying to address the complexity of having multiple solutions. So I mentioned NTA solutions, SIM platforms, SOAR platforms. We're doing all of this in a single platform.
Wonderful. And the next one we have, I think, again, is for you, is I already have invested in a breach protection solution. Would I need to rip this out to deploy the Cynet platform, or is this something that can complement it?
No, it's definitely something that can complement it. As I mentioned before, we developed the Smart Agent to run side by side any endpoint technology that you're running. We often have customers that have got antivirus or got next-gen antivirus, and we deploy alongside them and simply don't enable the AV and next-gen AV elements of Cynet. The added value that we're bringing is all of the forensic capability, the deception, the network analytics, the user behavior analytics, which you typically wouldn't get with an endpoint breach protection solution.
Wonderful. The next question we have is, can we get assistance to build our business case to take to the board? So in a nutshell, yes. I think firstly, the free threat assessment, once that's deployed in your environment, will give you some very powerful ability to go to the board and provide them with something that's quite meaningful and compelling for them to take action against. And as I mentioned before, ANSecurity does act as a trusted advisor for all security requirements, and we have the competence and experience to help and advise and assist you with creating your strategy and business cases for security solutions. Another question we have is there a free trial? Well, we did say there's a free threat assessment to everyone who's joined today, so we will be following up with you all directly following this session to arrange getting the free threat assessment set up for you. And on that note, the next question is, how easy is the threat platform, the free threat assessment to set up, and what will I gain from it? Anthony?
Yeah, it's very straightforward. We do lots of these. So the most common way to do it is, and the easiest way is that we at Cynet would set up a SaaS tenant for you. So we host it in our infrastructure, and we would then provide you with the installs for the Smart Agent, whether it's Windows, Linux, or Mac, and then you would then have to deploy, and then myself and the SOC will monitor your environment for a couple of weeks, and at the end of it we'll generate a report to give you what findings. Obviously, if we find any immediate threats throughout the 2 weeks, we'll obviously notify you and help you respond to them as well.
And the final question we have is, will you be running more educational sessions like this one? Absolutely. So over the coming weeks and months, we will be reaching out to invite you to similar events in the future, so please do keep an eye out for invites from our team. I think that is all the questions that we have.
There's actually a couple more in the chat window, James, which I think one's for you, and I think I can take the last one as well.
Okay, do you want to take your question first after you?
Yeah, so the question is, do you have a lot of small businesses using the solution? The answer is yes, 100%. So we cater from SMB all the way up to very large enterprise. So in fact, I would say at the moment, I see that we're getting a lot more customers in the smaller, for smaller businesses, because as I mentioned before, that they don't have the people and the processes or even the technology. They need something that's going to give them this 360 view, and they want it managed as well with the managed SOC. So 100%, it's definitely a solution for a small business.
Wonderful. And the other question I've got is, how can I arrange the free vulnerability assessment? So, yeah, we'll be following up with you directly after this session, later today or tomorrow. And what that involves is just setting up maybe an hour of your time to look at getting this deployed in the environment. And then that'll probably take a couple of weeks, as Anthony said, to start feeding back the current state of things before we can start to look at recommendations and taking action. Any more questions? No, I think that's it.
Like it, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I hope you've all found the session worthwhile today. Thank you all for once again taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend this session. We look forward to following up with each of you to set up the free threat assessment, and we hope you can join us for our future events. So that just leaves me to say stay safe, take care, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you, Anthony, for your help today.